Welcome to the Simplified Organization show, where real moms chat about real life and how to manage our responsibilities at home while prioritizing our people. We want to banish overwhelm, fulfill our callings, and stay cheerful while we do it, because this is good work that God is doing in and through us. I'm your host, Misty Winkler, a second-generation homeschooling mom of 5 kids, ages 18 to 9, and I write and podcast at simplyconvivial.com, and am author of the book, The Convivial Homeschool: Gospel Encouragement for Keeping Your Sanity While Living and Learning Alongside Your Kids. And today I'm joined by Joy Pullmann. Joy is a happily married mother of 6 children, ages 11 and under, and the executive editor of the Federalist, the top publication for new right ideas. She and her husband are the co-founders of a classical Charlotte Mason Christian school, and they are both graduates of Hillsdale College, which is where they met. So thank you so much for joining me today, Joy.
Oh, thanks for having you. I've been a huge fan for a very long time, so I'm delighted to be able to talk to you in person.
So you have 6 kids, and I mean, executive editor, seems like kind of a big deal.
I'm told that by my bosses. I don't know if they're just trying to pump my ego, but I mean, it's a very demanding job at the top of our industry. It takes a lot of my time and my energy, and I'm proud of it. And yeah, I mean, so I'm in charge of all the editorial over here at, this really huge, conservatarian kind of publication.
Yeah. How often do articles go out on the site?
Well, I am currently in charge of publishing kind of our morning batch. So that will be anywhere from 10 to 14 articles. And then we have staffers publishing articles throughout the day. I would say maybe on average about 1 or 2 an hour.
Wow. So that's a lot to manage. And then 6 kids is also a lot to manage.
It is, but they both are full-time jobs in themselves.
So what would you say to either the other working moms, or maybe those who have kids and feel like, well, a job is more fulfilling than being home with the kids? Should I do more or be more than staying home with the kids? But then the kids feel like so much. So
I mean, I guess I could answer that question in a lot of ways, and I do get that a lot. But I think the first one is talking about the fact that, I mean, maybe by the time the podcast goes up, this will already be in place, but I'm moving down to part-time. And there's been a lot of times in my career, depending on how many babies I have, or how young the baby is, that I've gone to part-time. And my work has been very flexible this whole time. So I've been really blessed to have bosses who work with me. So my husband and I have also, he's worked nights and weekends. Sometimes he's been in graduate school. So we've done a lot of very flexible, work to try to keep our kids really cared for by us almost exclusively. So that is a very large amount of wear and tear on the mom. And I really encourage, but it also has really taught me, so we talked about, I work at the top of the media industry, and I've, seen people who are basically celebrities, they're on TV all the time, have very huge superpowered careers. And I mean, the honest truth is, first of all, that my life as a mother is a lot more actually challenging to me, and really challenges my character and challenges me to grow, especially in my faith, but also, just the general character a lot more even than my career, which I also find very fulfilling. But I mean, honestly, mothering has been, I just feel like it's kind of the Olympic sport of being a human being for a woman. But then the second thing that I think about is observing, all of those kind of high profile people that I just mentioned. A lot of them really are not happy. And, and I've had people say to me behind the scenes, you are so blessed that you have kids, that you had them young. And that has been very encouraging to me, because it is really, really hard to have a lot of kids, and to, I mean, even if you don't have a lot of kids, just little kids or children in general, they ask a lot out of you. So it's been very enlightening to me to be behind the scenes with people who look very glitzy and glamorous to other people, and realize that the most meaningful thing that I do every single day, and the most challenging, really is my relationships with my family. So I mean, I think that's really important for us. I just always want to tell people that, because I remember being on the other side, of the curtain or of the green room, you might call it, and, being really impressed by these people. And then when you get a closer look, you think, wow, my home life is actually really happy. And I'm really happy about that. And I would far prefer having, a happy marriage and children to, having a huge career. And a lot of times people do have to sacrifice one for the other. And, if you have the choice, man, pick the family every time.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I know when I was growing up, my parents were, both of their moms had worked,
Hmm.
and they, very intentionally chose to have my mom stay at home because,
Hmm.
my dad worked long hours. And so it was either that or daycare, which gets really expensive. And that wasn't the family life that they wanted. And,
Hmm.
that was before the internet. So doing work online wasn't a thing back then. And, having mom at home was so formative, and
Hmm.
and we knew that there were sacrifices
Yeah.
involved. Um, we didn't have spare cash for anything,
Yeah.
but we had more kids, and we had, a happy home, and that was
That is
worth
worth
it.
any amount of money.
Hmm.
Honestly, eating beans and rice. That's what my husband and I, when we talk about potential financial futures, we say, would we be happy eating beans and rice? Yes, we would. Of course we all like steak and all the rest, but if you have that family life, it is worth scrimping and saving. And both of my husband's parents and mine at different times had to really do that in serious ways. And the kids don't notice all the financial trappings as much. And what we need in our society is not more people really focused on gaining a lot of money and prestige, but we need more people focused on creating decent citizens and human beings and
Yeah.
creating happy home lives. And we are really, really bad at that as a society. But at the end of your life, you're never going to look back and say, gee, I should have spent more hours at the office. And I've heard again, people with massive best-selling books and careers and things say that to me, that they have huge regrets. So I want to share that to people, because I don't I think people get the grass is greener on the other side thing, but the truth is that investing in your mothering and your family and your Christian walk in the way that having a family requires you to do is the number one most meaningful and best thing that you really can do with your life.
Hmm. Well, I hear so often from women that maybe had a career before they had kids, and thought they were organized and put together and had good character
Yes.
and all this stuff. So I'm ready to have kids and a family. And then they have kids and they're home, and they're like, I'm not at all organized. It turns
Yeah.
out I'm terribly impatient.
Yep. That's actually why I love you are so encouraging to me, because when you talk about those character issues and you put those front and foremost, which is something completely different what you hear from most women's speakers and Christian speakers even, so elevating those affairs of the heart. I mean, it's just been wonderful mentoring for me, so I appreciate that. If you want, I have a couple. I mean, I have practical tips, that we talked about, both about kind of like, my personal meal planning, because I consider myself a pretty organized person. There's a few things that I wanted to share with people just about this specific issue of kind of balancing the whole family and the work life without, I do a lot of like check-ins with my kids, and every single day and multiple times throughout the day, I should kind of check their temperature and see, do you need mother more right now, and try to put them first. Anyway, so I guess that's one, but I had four other ones that I wanted to kind of suggest about basically how we managed to have 6 kids with 2 full-time working parents and no daycare. In fact, the max number of babysitter hours I've done per week is like 46. So it's really very minimal. The first thing that I've learned over my marriage, and we've been married now for almost 12 years, so
Mhm.
that's decent, but not super long, I would say. But that's been a blessing to me, is to let my husband discipline and not get in his way, especially in front of the kids. there's, so husbands and wives often they bring different things to the table because of the way that God made us men and women. And so we definitely talk about those things privately without the kids, but allowing my husband to really be the leader and the man of the family and the father to the children and have very high standards for behavior has been actually a huge blessing to me as a mother, because the children having good behavior helps me relax and not feel like I'm going crazy all day long with these undisciplined kids. As a young wife, I was really nervous about that, because men are more dominant and aggressive, and it was a little, and my husband's actually a very gentle and self-controlled man, but, as a woman, you are not intuitively the same as a man. So him getting into his masculine can be scary. So to relax and let him do his thing that God made him to do has been such a blessing to me. And I recommend that wives consider that, think about it, and let their husbands do that. The second one that's been huge to me is being willing to ask for help and to accept it. So I've seen, especially young mothers, it's very, very hard to have babies and toddlers. If you have babies and toddlers at the same time, that is really intense. If someone says, hey, you want to come over to my house for a play date, or you want to come over for a meal, or, hey, how about I take your 4-year-old, 5-year-old for a morning while we're going to the park so you can get a nap while the baby's little, say yes. Just say yes. And when you get to the point where you have older kids, let somebody else pay it forward. I think there's a lot of people who are reluctant to ask for help and let others in, and just stop doing that. Just stop being prideful about that. It will help your life be happier. And that kind of related to that is living near your family or a church that acts like family. So we personally don't live near our physical family, but we do have a wonderful church community, and that has allowed us to really lean into the accountability and the reciprocity that comes from those close relationships. And what that really does is it's just a huge blessing for your life. So if you're isolated, not near your extended family or a church community that acts like family, consider really taking care of that. I know, Misty, you've made some changes in your life maybe related to that, and I recommend that too. And the last thing, kind of related to practical tips just for in general managing, work and children, is basically never have non-work screen time. I don't watch movies. I don't go on social media. And that frees up hours and hours a day that I can either spend with my children or at work. Those are basically the only two things that I do besides, having friends and going to church. But, so slimming down all those things really also helps calm the hecticness of my mind, but it also gives me hours and hours a week that I can spend on things that I care much more about, and I find a lot more fruitful.
Yeah, I know just before I made the decision to get off Instagram, part of the reasoning was that was when Apple released the whole screen time report.
Yeah.
And I would have said that I spent, maybe 2 or 3 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like 6 to 8. And
Yep.
I'm like, whoa.
Well, especially if you're parenting too, you're modeling to your children, that behavior, and you're teaching them where to go for comfort and relaxation. And I am a big fan of comfort and relaxation. We all need downtime. There's healthier ways to do it. And you talk about this all the time, right? So you're probably aware of this, but, going for a walk or a bike ride, or like you say, getting a glass of water, or just having a conversation with someone you love. Those are all really low key, fruitful ways to rest and recharge. And I feel like I get a lot more out of that than scrolling through this or that, other thing, or checking my email, which is anxiety inducing.
Yeah, I found when I stopped scrolling, having something on my phone to just scroll through and zone out, that the things that I did instead to take a break and have a moment of calm really were calming. And that helped me recognize how much that zoning out time on Instagram was actually just,
it's actually low level stress, I would say.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And fragmented, distracted thinking that then carries into the day after you put the phone down. It felt much easier to think after a few days of no Instagram.
I actually go screen free on Saturdays. So another, way that I kind of try to fit in my work around family. I've done many different things at different times. We've had my husband and I, kind of switching off midday, That's actually now our summer schedule since he's a teacher. I also have done where I only work when the kids are sleeping, basically. So before they wake up in the morning and then during their afternoon nap time. That's actually mostly what I've been doing right now. And then, there's other times where, my husband would get home from work at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and then I'd work for 2 hours and he'd make dinner. And then, we've done all kinds of different things. But one of the things that's been a constant throughout that is trying for me to have screen-free Saturdays. And the difference in that to my just feeling good and competent, like I can follow a thread, is wonderful. So if you can't do that, so I can't be offline right now during work days, but I can do it on Saturdays, and that's really restorative for me.
That's such a good point. That's it for this first part of the conversation with Joy Pullmann, but stay tuned for next week because she has so many more great tips and great encouragement for prioritizing our families and why that is so important. You can find resources that Joy has created by finding her bio at the Federalist, which I have linked in the description below. And if doing all these things just seems way too overwhelming and your mind is blown by thinking about all the details Joy juggles, and maybe even that you are also juggling, comparing yourself and therefore succumbing to overwhelm, pause and go to answeroverwhelm.com. That's answeroverwhelm.com, and you will get instant access to my 1-hour workshop on how to notice and respond appropriately to the feelings of overwhelm that come up in our hearts and minds. Overwhelm is not a state that we should live in, but we need to know how to respond properly when we do feel that way. So go to answeroverwhelm.com so that you can get a grip on those feelings of overwhelm. And come back for part 2 of my conversation with Joy also. Not only that, remember to repent, rejoice, repeat.